give it a second to let some more people into the room. I will add people in as they join. But welcome. Today we are joined by the lovely Mark, who is a Freebird Club member, who will be doing a presentation on an introductory to travel photography for members. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, indeed.
Great. Great. So a little bit about Mark. Mark is originally from Hollywood, California, and he grew up in the citrus groves of the San Fernando Valley, which is just outside of Los Angeles. In 1980, he moved to Oregon with his then wife and his 3 sons. Now Mark is single, semi-retired, and he is living in Central Oregon, just north of Bend and a heart's breadth away from Smith Rock State Park. Mark spent the first half of his career in the computer industry as a computer programmer, operator, and data center manager. Since leaving the industry in the mid-90s, Mark has exercised his entrepreneurial side, owning several businesses and having a short stint as a flight attendant. So Mark's interest in photography started in the late 60s with standard film-based cameras, and then that led him to home-based photo processing. He's a nature lover, enjoys the outdoors, enjoys traveling, and that is what brought him to Freebird Club and brought him here today. So I will pass over the microphone to Mark, and I will pin him on the screen so that everybody can see him. Great. Thank you, Mark.
All right. Hey, thanks for everybody for joining and coming along today. So not going to be really a formal process. Just thought I'd share some of thoughts, what I've learned along the way of taking photos, and hopefully give you some ideas and tips on when you're out traveling, which is, since this is a travel club, that's what we're doing. So, and everybody's taking travel photos. So we'll just kind of chat about how to get a better photo. And, I don't do this for a living. I just do it for fun. I don't publish photos or anything like that. Some of them certainly turn out well enough to be published, but it's a big world of, there's millions of photographers out there that are selling photos. So it's more of a personal hobby than anything else. So Rachel's going to handle all the, if you got questions. So if you just put them in the chat, and Rachel, keep track of them. So we can either save them up for the end, or we can, take them as we go. So first thing I wanted to chat about is, kind of the basics of to get a better photo, you really have to kind of get away from the mindset of taking a lot of photos, hoping that, if you take a whole bunch, it's going to be better. Well, and I think if you're really trying to get a better photo, it's more a process of slowing down and deciding really what you're trying to capture when you're at wherever you're at, whether it's a street scene or nature scene, or even if you're talking about a selfie, changing the mindset is like, well, I'm just going to take a photos. Well, why are you taking the photo? In most cases, especially in a travel club, my assumption is that you're taking the photo because you want to remember the moment that you're in, and to do that, that's going to take a little more time. And we're not talking minutes; we're just talking a mindset. Okay, well, why am I taking this photo? And then when you're looking through the lens, taking a little time to actually see what's in the lens. A lot of people just put the photo up there, and you see them all the time. And I've traveled with people like this, and man, they're just taking photo after photo after photo, and they're taking burst. And it's like, okay, well, we all know when you get home, you're not going to go through them all. And if you take 1,000 bad photos, it doesn't do you any good. So you really have to think about why you're taking it. And taking less photos a lot of times is going to be better than taking more, because you're taking a little more time and capturing really what you want to capture. So with that in mind, if you haven't been around photography a lot, there's a basic rule. It's called the law of thirds. So when you're looking through the lens of your camera, you want to divide that picture that's in the camera in thirds, left to right, top to bottom. And so when you do that, you're when you're looking through the lens, you want to make sure you don't have too much sky or too much earth or whatever, top to bottom, left to right. You're really trying to, in a sense, center your photo. What we don't really realize as humans is that, um, our brains and our physically, there's way more going on when we're um, taking in a photo with our eyes than our camera can capture. So we have to do a little bit of that work that we're assuming is happening because our brain's doing that for us all the time. It's taking in auditory and sensory and sound and all that stuff and giving you a sensation about a photo. Well, your camera's not doing that. So you got to do that yourself. Um, and the law of thirds allows you to do that because you're kind of, when you're looking in the lens, you're looking left to right, top to bottom, and kind of paying attention to what's in there and saying, well, too much of, maybe somebody that's standing right next to you, you don't want them in the photo. And so you have to change your orientation to say, okay, I want less of them and more of the church, or less of them and more of the waterfall, or, I don't want, I don't want to see the path in front of me. I want to see the water in front of me. So it's a, left and right, up and down movement, and then just say, okay, well, then that's what you're really looking for. And that takes a little time to get that practice down. So um, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and see if I can show you a couple photos that kind of give you that, um, sense of that process. So let's see. So here's a good one that I shot when I was in Switzerland a number of years ago. And this photo here, although it's a pretty good photo, it shows, I mean, this was at a church outside a small town called Coeur. And these are all graves, and they meticulously maintain it. And that's a nice photo, but there really isn't, it doesn't draw you in. So if you go and as a comparison, I didn't do anything other than I just turned around and took the picture facing the other direction. And then you got this photo where you've got this arch in the background, you've got showing the hillside, and way off in the distance, you've got a little bit of clouds. It was overcast, so the sky's really not that blue. But in this case, you've got this path that's basically bringing you into the photo and walking around the curve, and gives you a little more perspective. So that just, when you're taking a photo, you want to look around you and say, okay, well, do I really like that? Well, maybe not. And then just turn around, maybe, left to right, or front, back, left to right, and say, oh, there could be a better angle of that. So, and so along with that, let's say, because really what you're trying to do is capture the feeling that you had when you're obviously you're traveling because you want the experience, but you want to remember that experience and where you were and what you were feeling when you were there. And like I said, it's going to take a little more time to capture the really essence of really why you're there. So in this, I'll show you another example of I was again, it was in Switzerland. And I love Europe in general for all the churches that are there, and their ornate, architecture and all that. But on this particular church, it was in the evening, and this was when I walked into this church.
But can
This
I stop you just for a second? I'm not sure if the
Yes.
photos are showing up big for anyone. Can people see them? Or I think it's because you might be just sharing one part of your screen.
Oh, how would I do that?
If you try to, I assume, are you just double clicking on them right now? Is that where you're?
Yes.
Yeah. You can either make them larger by going to the top right, um, like where you see like the 4 squares and the 3 lines like higher. Yes, over there, a little bit to
Yes.
the left. One over, the other right to the left. Or I guess on my computer, it's the left. One more. Yeah, if you press that 4th button, yes, you can see them right there.
Okay.
Cool. Great.
So it'll take me a little longer to find them, but yeah. So in this example, like I was referring to, it was a small town in Switzerland, outside of Born, Switzerland, late in the evening or late in the afternoon. But when I walked into the church, it was like just filled with this really warm light from these windows. And that was the picture I was trying to capture, was that warm light, the essence of the architecture and 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 the church. So every time I look at that photo, that's what I'm getting, is that um, sense of what I've sensed when I walked into the church. So I think that's what you're trying, at least when I'm taking a photo, that's what I'm trying to capture. I don't want, a dozen photos of a church that is just doesn't mean anything. I want a photo that when I look at it, it reminds me of why I was there and what I was experiencing with, in the moment. Um, so that's one example. So you're trying to capture the feeling, and so to do that, a lot of times you really have to understand the lighting. So there's a term called the golden hours when it comes to the overall lighting of the day, and the golden hours are the hour just after sunrise and just before sunset, or just as the sun's setting. The light's very diffused, and you're not getting a lot of the brightness has kind of gone away, and you're getting more of the soft hues. So I'm going to go back to let's see if I can go back to the view that I was at before. Um, see if I can find another one. Um,
If you go back to the button all the way, the one to the left, more where the 4 squares are, you'll be able to
got
see
it.
it. Yeah,
All
like,
right.
and then you can.
So I'm going to try to show you a couple different photos when it comes to lighting. So I've been to Iceland a number of times. I guess I'm an overall, like I mentioned, a nature lover. So I love the wide openness of Iceland, but also the architecture. And if you've been to Reykjavik, there's the church. It's the primary church in the heart of Reykjavik. Um, and to capture that, I was there multiple days, so I went there multiple times at different times of the evening. So um, this particular time, it was, let's see, I'm going to get a photo early in the day if I can get there. Um, well, yeah, so we'll do this photo here, which captures the church in a. Can everybody see that? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the sun is, you can see in the far background. It's a pretty good picture of the church, but in my mind, it didn't really capture the essence of the church. So I came back, and since I was there multiple days, I came back later in the evening, because what I like to do when I'm visiting places is I just wander around the towns and the cities and just trying to capture the heart and the essence of the city. So in that is, in this instance, I was just trying to get a really good picture of the church. And so a lot of times you're going to have to play with your orientation. So you can either do landscape or portrait. So I came back in the evening, and this was with my iPhone. I have an iPhone, I think an iPhone 11 at that time. So it's not nearly as nice as the current smartphones, but it does have a pretty good nighttime version or capture possibility. So I came back later in the evening, and then I shot it like this, which you can see a little bit of the distortion right here in the middle from the lens, but you can take that out in editing. And this is I really like the photo, but I changed the orientation. This is landscape. Then I changed it to a portrait, and this portion really shows the church in a grander scale. The same photo that I basically took during the day, just a little closer, and it really shows the architecture and um, the overall beauty of the church. Now, eventually, when I processed this, when I went with this version, I cropped it so that I cut out this car and stuff like that, and it turned out to be a really nice photo. So, um, so if you're trying to really get a photo that you remember, a lot of times you're just gonna have to go back, not have to, but you might choose to take multiple looks at the same building or the same street in different lights. So, because a lot of times, like I'm going to go back to this orientation. Um, a lot of times, if you're taking photos like in the bright of day, I'm trying to find a photo that really doesn't really give you much. Yeah, yeah, I don't really have a very good example of that. But the main thing is that when you're shooting photos, the general rule of thumb when it comes to the sun and the light is you really don't want to be shooting directly into the sun, um, unless you're going to filter it or something like that. I'll share you a photo. I didn't take this with my iPhone. This was with my wide angle digital camera, but I'll show you the difference between different settings, and you can get this with an iPhone. It's just going to take you a little more time. This particular photo, this was in Iceland at the ice lagoon, they call it, or glacier lagoon, and it's just filled with. And in this setting, they look very small, but they're actually pretty good pieces of ice. So this first photo um, is basically shooting right into the sun, and I'm basically got my wide angle lens almost on the sand in the water almost. But obviously that's very bright. The sun bleaches everything out. But I went and I changed the settings in that case. And let me see if I can find it without changing. Um, where is it? Right here. So basically, this photo is the same photo, but I just in that case I changed my settings on my camera, so it it was a faster shot, meaning that the shutter speed was faster, and I changed the light settings. So now this is really a better photo, but either way, you're shooting directly in the sun, and the sun just really overshadows what you're really trying to accomplish. So a lot of times you really have to pay attention to where the sun is. If you got the sun at your back, which is sometimes a better option, you're going to have to be careful that your shadow is not in the picture, unless you want your shadow in the picture. Um, you may have to move yourself, like I said earlier, left to right, um, stand next to something. So uh, I find myself always the best lighting is to shoot with the light at my back. I will move to maybe a tree or a light, a lamppost or something will hide um, I basically hide my shadow in the shadow. So you get the photo, but your shadow isn't in it. So, um, so let's move on to a little bit of composition, because a lot of times people they're again are just taking photo after photo, and they're really not thinking, well, do I really want all that, um, you know, noise in a sense in my photo? Um, Sometimes you do, um, sometimes you don't. Like in this case, um, this was in Salzburg, Austria. Um, this particular um, street like a lot of the streets in Europe and Switzerland and the other towns, old cobblestones, tall buildings, narrow streets, and this not a bad photo, but it really is kind of, you really don't have much context of the shops or anything like that. But what I did was I just kind of took it in a different setting, and this was a little different lighting. So here it gives you, it's basically the same street, but just down a little bit farther, looking the other direction. And you gave it some perspective. Like I've got this, you've got this church in the background. It helps you get a little more feeling of the architecture, and then you got more of the people. And I captured this lady with the hat and the colors. So um, there again, you just have to spend a little more time in um, as you're capturing the photo and say, well, what am I trying to capture? And in this instance, I was just trying to capture the essence of shopping in Salzburg and the old town. And so I had to change the orientation, I had to pay attention to the light. And so the same thing, you're trying to add some perspective to the photo. A lot of times you'll, so I'm going to get another photo that kind of shows it a different perspective in the lighting. This here particular photo was early morning in Iceland, and um, this shows you the difference in the, just taking a little time. I spent a lot of time, probably half an hour to an hour. It was sub-freezing temperatures in the winter to get this shot. But this particular photo was just of a farmhouse out on the Golden Circle, they call it. And that's a pretty nice photo. It's got pretty good color. But what I did was I just waited and changed my perspective a little bit. So it really changed the enhancement. See, I try to find the other half. It's too hard to find that way. And got this photo, which was basically the same house, same location, but I just moved my perspective a little bit and waited for the sun to change. It was coming up, and I used a post-processing tool, which we'll talk about later. But these are all the real colors that were there. But sometimes you're just going to have to wait a few minutes. And a lot of times I'll find myself just, if I like the photo or the location that I'm at, I may hang around a street corner in a city or something just to let the light change, maybe let the people move out or people move in, so you can get the really photo that you're wanting. So that work comes into composition. You want to give it some thought. Here's one of a church in Copenhagen that I really enjoyed, and I was just trying to capture the essence of the church itself on the inside, but they're pretty massive. So this was the photo that I took. Let me show you the first photo, which this church was built in the late 1300s and rebuilt in the 1700s, and just super ornate. And this was taken in a portrait situation, but it really doesn't give you the grandeur of the church. So I changed it, and I took almost the same photo, but I changed it to landscape. And where is that? I wish it would have put all these photos together, but this just a landscape version gives you a little more of the ceiling, a little more of the grandeur and how big it is, because it's really hard to capture the bigness on film. So just changing the orientation, you get more light and you get a different perspective of the church. So I kind of like the portrait version more. It gives you a little more narrow perspective, puts you more in the photo, and this to me is a little busy. So let's see. So let's talk about a little bit about framing, which I talk about framing is especially if you're talking about nature photography, it's there again, our brains and our bodies process nature magnificently, and it's really hard to capture that with your camera. So a lot of times you want to bring things into it that gives it a little more perspective. Um, this first photo, if I can find it here. Well, this was in Switzerland up in the Alps, and I was looking down over Innsbruck, and what I did was I took this photo originally, and it was just more of a landscape, and this is Innsbruck down here on the bottom, but it's such a huge expanse, and it's hard for our brains to bring it into context. And then these crows showed up because they thought I was going to feed them. And so I snapped this photo, and it's like, okay, here's a little more perspective. It shows you how big the landscape is behind you. Not necessarily a great photo, but it shows you that, that's a big, big expanse out there, and you're going to want to do something to kind of bring it into perspective. So this is not the greatest example, but you want to try and do things like that that give the photo a little more grounding. So let's see if I can find another example of that. Mhm. Yeah, so here's one. Again, it was Iceland on the ring road. I took this particular photo. This just happened to be a chair that somebody put on the side of the road, and it's become a landmark, and so they maintain it. So um, it's just sitting out there on this rock, and I guess it's promoting this, lounge house back here. But in the landscape version, it's really it kind of gets lost because of the rule of thirds kind of you got way too much sky, way too much, left to right stuff. So I changed it so that the orientation was portrait, and that really is more the picture I was looking for. I wanted to capture is like, here's this red chair sitting out there, and people do go up and sit on it apparently and take photos. But I was just trying to capture the essence of the red chair out in the middle of nowhere in a sense. So there again, it's you're trying to ground it, you're trying to bring yourself into it, and there again, and again, remember why you're there or what you were feeling when you're there. So um, that's part of the grounding. Um, so let's talk a little bit more about how we doing on time, Rachel. We're about half an hour, so
Yeah,
you doing
we're good.
okay?
Yeah.
Um, so let's just maybe spend a little time looking at a couple different photos and the good and the bad of paying attention to when you're taking a photo. This particular photo was in Innsbruck, I believe, and I was shooting a church with um, the foreground of all the graves, and well, I was focused on all the graves up front, and I chopped off the top of the church. So when you look at it, I think, well, what happened to the top of the church? It's like, yeah, so the law of thirds, I didn't really pay attention that I have way too much foreground and not enough, you know, um, I needed to move the lens up a little bit. So I took another photo and changed the orientation from landscape to portrait, and then we got this. So there you have it's capturing. It's really the colors are all that great, but this is a 16th century church, and all the gravels are not, you know, the grays and hues are okay, but it just captured more of really the church itself and the surroundings. So there again, you're gonna have to you take the time to pay attention, and on your smartphone, you can quickly go back and look at, well, wow, I cut the top of the church off, so I need to take a better photo. Um, let's see if I can find another example of that. Um, let's see. I don't know why this. So here's one that gives you, I thought I had a before and after, but this is a street scene. This was in Sweden, and there again, it's an old downtown section, tall buildings, narrow pathways, and they have a lot of pathways between one little block to the next that are narrow. And um, so this is just a shot of, I waited for this guy to show up and be in the frame, because even that's a good photo either way. But if you add this like person in it, it kind of brings a little more perspective that of not only the color, but the, the walkway. But once again, you're going to have to take a little more time in your photos, and you end up with something maybe that you like a little more, that helps you remember that, well, it's a busy place, lots of people around. And um, that helps you remember that by adding this person into it. So let's see, what else can we do here? Trying to think.
Should we pause
I
for a
got some
moment?
more examples, but maybe
Does
here's
anybody,
this. Go ahead, Rachel.
I'm gonna say, does anybody have any questions? We could pause for a second.
Yeah.
I do. I have a question.
All right.
Was that person that you were talking about, was that person on a bicycle, or that you added in there?
Oh, this one here.
Right.
No, he was just basically squatting at the base of the stairs.
Okay. It was
looks
hard to
like
tell.
taking a picture or something. It's somebody squatting down trying to take a picture from that
Yeah,
angle.
he's basically doing the same thing I'm doing, taking a picture of this narrow walkway that's been all, painted up with graffiti. Um,
Oh,
and
okay.
so that's an example of, okay, well, sometimes you're going to have to wait. If you don't, obviously, I waited, and I have another photo that, there's nobody in the photo, which is the better photo you know, of the street scene. But I thought it was interesting that, he walked up and started taking photos while I was just standing there. And a lot of times you're going to have to wait to get the photo that you really like.
Mhm. Right.
I have
Another
a
question I had about that church. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh,
But
yeah,
church, go ahead. You go.
and maybe I'm asking the same question as you. I've always, I've been into a lot of churches, and a couple of problems I have is, one, that sometimes they're just too big and massive, and I have no idea what to focus on, and other times they're dark, and I just wondered, do you have any hints about that, or any of the best times of day to get the insides of churches well?
Well, if you have I don't know what type of smartphone you have, if that's what you're using, a smartphone.
Well, that's what I'm using now. Yeah, most of
Yeah,
the time.
the iPhone, they have a really nice, it's called a night feature that you can take nighttime photos.
Okay.
I can show you an example here, I think, of what I've captured at night with, well, I showed you that one with this one here. This was taken with an iPhone with their nighttime setting. So it does really good with low light settings. So you can use that even if it's in the day, it'll help you take it allows more light in. You have to be a little more cautious of movement because it is allowing the shutter to be open a little longer. So you could, if you're not steadying your hand, maybe leaning against a post, so you don't have as much movement, but you can use that nighttime setting indoors during the day.
Oh, okay, I never thought of that actually. Thank you.
I think Emily had a question.
Okay, so that church where you were inside the church that was very ornate, and you said it was set up for portrait. There was no one in that picture at all. Did you have permission to be set up for that? And do you have to arrange permission? And what time of day was that?
Well, it was just middle of the day, I just waited till nobody was there.
Okay.
There
And
were people,
does the
people.
church, do they mind? Do they mind if you do that?
No. A lot of times, from what I've experienced throughout Europe, is that most churches, and even in Iceland and well, I guess in the Scandinavian countries, the churches are just open. So there's nobody, there may be somebody that's monitoring the church in general, but no, they allow you just to come in and take photos. And I'm not setting up like a tripod or anything like that. I'm just moving, forward and backward, throughout the church, left to right, until there again, a lot of times you're going to have to wait 5 or 10 minutes. I don't have any photos to show you here, but I was hiking in uh, Wyoming, taking pictures of the arches. I must have waited 40 minutes, to get this one arch where nobody was in the arch, because it was like the couple's spot. Every time you know, every 2 seconds there was another couple going to stand in the arch taking a selfie. It's like, geez, I just want a picture of nobody in there. So it took me quite a while, but eventually I got a picture of the arch with the nature in the background and nobody in it. But sometimes it can take a little time to do that, or to get people in
Okay.
it that you want.
Right, that too. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, Ken.
I can show you a couple of photos when it comes to lighting.
I think Ken has a
Yes.
question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've started to use the iPhone in panoramic mode to use vertical buildings to try and straighten out the lines.
Mhm.
Your thoughts on that?
A lot of times, yeah, especially if you're in situations where nature-wise, it's hard to get the um, uh, horizontal and vertical lines to be straight and not, cattywampus. A lot of times, I end up just turning my camera to compensate. So if I'm standing, um, let's say in a on a hillside where you're actually it's at an angle and the photo is not left, not level and plumb. If you're a builder, I'll change the actual. I'll tilt the camera to straighten it out. So in a sense, you're taking the manually, you're taking the tilt out of the buildings to give it, so it looks correct in your photo.
Yeah.
That's
I have
how
a
I do it.
question. I have a
Yes.
question. Can you please elaborate on how you use the law of thirds in your pictures?
What specifically were you referring to when it comes to it?
Like the law of thirds, like what exactly is it? I've heard
Well,
of it before, but I don't know. Like how? Can you elaborate
okay,
how
well,
you use it?
if you take a sheet of paper, let's say, and just envision a sheet of paper, and
Oh,
you're putting two lines down it to divide that sheet of paper up into thirds,
the horizontally or vertically?
and both ways.
Ah, okay.
It comes into play more horizontally than it does vertically, because um, typically what you'll get is way too much sky and or way too much earth, you know. So
Okay.
here I'll show you a photo, and this kind of shows you the lighting. This happens to be like I mentioned, or Rachel did. I live outside a state park, and it's um, very well visited, and it's called Smith Rock, and this particular photo is of Smith Rock, and it's right off my porch. But this shows you this is Smith Rock in the background, and this happens to be in the winter. The sun only does this in the winter. But in this instance, I have way too much foreground, and this bush doesn't do anything for the photo.
Yeah.
And the lighting, that's better than it is normally, but um, I just on a different day, I took this particular photo, and same shot, just a different morning. This is not enhanced or anything. That's just the way it looked. But I made sure I didn't get too much of the foreground. Um, you know, I've got enough to give it some grounding, but you also have up here in the top, I was able to capture the moon. That's the moon in the middle. So, and then you framed it, you know, in this case, I framed it with the trees on both sides. So if I would have moved left to right, meaning the third, you know, you got 2/3, 1/3, I could have cropped out this whole section between this tree and the flag, but it wouldn't be as balanced. So,
So what is exactly the law of thirds? You're supposed to fit what into what thirds?
well, you're trying to just divide up the photo so that it's balanced into
Ah,
thirds.
balance. Okay, I see. I see.
So
Okay,
you don't have
yeah,
too
too much of
much,
this and that. Yeah, too much of
correct. Because
yeah. Okay.
your brain and your eyesight is always trying to go to let me see if I can give you a good example of this is
For
this is a,
balance.
yeah, the balance. So here's a shot I took in Iceland again, early morning sunrise over I think it's the Atlantic if my memory serves me. But I took multiple photos and multiple times, but if I would have moved this, if the law of thirds was, you know, 2/3, 1/3, then the sun would have been over here on this side, which not saying that would be a bad photo, but your brain doesn't want to take you there. It wants to go into the middle of the photo.
Okay, so it's for balance primarily.
Yeah, and perspective.
Perspective. Okay.
Yeah, because your brain is always trying to go out to the end. Here's a photo that I took in Salzburg along the Salzer River, and there again, your brain is going way out here,
Yeah.
this to here, and so you're trying to make sure that the photo is balanced so that you're basically walking into the photo.
Yeah, I see. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Like here's one that I think I have. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see another one that's a really good example, but yeah, your brain. Here's one that I took. This was in Innsbruck. Um, if you would have done this particular photo, and you had this particular, you know, middle of the bridge,
Yeah.
you know, over to one side or the other, your brain would be constantly trying to balance that out. So you want to make sure that you're balancing top to bottom, left to right, and so that when somebody's looking at the photo, that it draws them in. It doesn't like they're looking at, well, what am I looking at? Am I looking at the
Yeah,
body?
I see. Yeah, right, right, right. Okay.
So if you don't do that, a lot of times people are confused about what they're looking at.
What's the subject? Yeah, right. Okay.
So like here, here's another example. This was in Amsterdam. I took this photo of the canal, which is not a bad photo of the canal, but pretty busy. It's like, okay, what are you trying to show the buildings? Are you trying to show the
Right.
walkway? Or
Uh-huh.
but I took another photo of basically the canal. Where is it? I have another photo. At least I thought I did. Um, Let me try one thing here because I don't know why these it keeps dropping off a lot of my photos and then oh, there it is. There it is. I took this other photo. Thought I had another photo of the canals. Oh, this will do. This was, again, I changed the framing and I changed the lighting. And so this shows you a much better perspective of the canals.
Yeah.
It shows you a little more of the city. You got this light here from the street light that
Is
lit
that
up this.
because there's like a subject in the middle, like the dome? So it kind of
Yes,
like brings everything together.
yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Thanks.
Any other questions? I mean, I got plenty of examples of good and bad stuff. Here's an example to show you what you can do with your iPhone. This particular photo I took of the Northern Lights with my iPhone. You can't do anything with it because it's too grainy if you try to blow it up, but it shows you um, in the dark of night, you can still capture almost,
Wow.
very, very minimal light.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, it's a lousy photo because all this stuff in here is, they call it noise. It's basically, um, too much, the light that's just getting diffused. But um, you can take some really good photos with very, very little light with your iPhone with the nighttime settings. Here's another one. There again, nighttime iPhone. This was in Iceland, out in Akureyri, which is on the very north end of Iceland. Just um, using the law of thirds. There's not too much darkness at the top. We try not to have too much of this purple walkway, but it led you right up to that church on the hill. So it gives you some perspective of the city, and um, you know, you don't get a lot of movement from the light because um, there's not a lot going on, but it just puts you right there in the picture. So like I said, I got tons of photos to share, but we're getting close to our time here.
Yeah, are there any more questions for Mark? Anyone wants to ask last minute?
I have a question. When you're out there taking that picture of the Northern Lights, where are you? Are you out in the backyard in an open field or where?
That particular photo was taken in it's a town called Hoffen, just on southeastern part of Iceland. It was just right outside our hotel or Airbnb that we were staying at, just out in the field.
Okay.
And I had my wide angle lens and all that, but I had a trouble figuring out some of the settings, and I just didn't capture it with my wide angle lens like wanted to, and so I gave up and just at least captured them with my iPhone. Because unless you're in like Finland and Norway and stuff like that, where you get them a lot, Iceland, they show up quite a bit in the winter, but they have a lot of overcast skies. So it's you just got to be ready when they do show up.
All right, thank you.
So there are a couple, just to wrap it up, there are a couple of apps that you can use. And for iPhone, it's a iPhone, they call it the iPhone Photo Academy. He's got a great site out there that, and I can give Rachel the actual um, address so you guys could log in and look at it. But he's got just tons of tools out there to teach you about how to shoot photos with your iPhone. Because a lot of times I just travel with my iPhone and I'll leave my digital at home unless I'm trying to um, use my wide angle lens for astrophotography, taking photos at night. The iPhone, and especially the newer ones, you get the 14 and above with the multiple lenses and the zooms and all that. You can get a lot of good photos, with the iPhone. And so I can't speak for Google, but I'm sure there's, the Android phone, I'm sure you have the same thing. And there's, photo classes out there that'll teach you how to use your iPhone, because there's a number of settings that you can turn on or off in your iPhone that helps you um, save your photo in a better format, larger or smaller. And so you may want to look into that. And then there's post photo apps, and the one I use is called Snapseed. It's just a photo that's an app that's on my phone. I don't know whether it's, available around the globe, but it's certainly available in the US. And you just can bring a photo into it and take a standard photo that's well balanced and you like, that's got some decent color, and you can enhance those colors and make it something that you really would like to, share and use. And then there are also some apps. I think I showed a photo. Let me see if this one. No, that isn't it. Called Photo Logo, that you can use to kind of protect your photos, because we live in a digital world, and you can put your signature on photos. Let me see. I need to find one. I saw one earlier that had my signature on it. But anyway, it's called Photo Logo.
On one, yeah.
Pardon me?
I say I noticed your signature on one of the
Yeah.
photos. Wondered how you
So
got it.
The one in
So
Iceland, Iceland.
is that where it was? Maybe it was.
Yeah, it was
I think
the
that
one,
one, yeah, the blue.
the cottage.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The one with the yellow house in it, I think, wasn't it? Maybe.
Yeah, I saw it once. Maybe it was this one. Nope. But anyway, it's a inexpensive app, and you basically, send them your name or first and last name, and they'll actually create a signature for you, and you can get it in multiple colors. So you can add a signature, you can enhance your photo, and then you can bring it into this photo logo app, and then you can actually drop your signature at the bottom. So at least, that doesn't keep somebody from stealing it, but at least, and they would have to crop out your signature if they wanted to use it.
What about for Samsung Galaxy phones? Would you have some recommendations for apps?
No, I tried to look some up, and since I'm on an iPhone, I really didn't find too many, but I know there are some.
Yeah, okay. I'll just look for it.
Because Galaxy is really not that, Android is, pretty darn comparable, if maybe not better in some cases. But yeah, I really couldn't I haven't used them, so I really couldn't recommend any.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
Yeah, I just got a new Samsung Galaxy S22 and or newer one anyway, and I watched a video on YouTube about a guy was talking about the using it for photographs, and he gave so many hints and went so fast I'd have to watch it 10 times to catch everything and figure out, you know, how he did what he was doing or how he got to where he was to do what he was doing and that sort of thing. It's amazing the amount of
Yeah,
stuff that they're
and that's what I
on
liked
that.
about this iPhone Photo Academy. He basically has created like lessons. He'll, you know,
Yeah, one lesson on one thing at a time would have been
correct.
better.
And so he'll take you through the different processes
Right.
on each type of subject, whether it's, you know, portrait photography or whatever. And so you can go and it's not expensive. And then you can once you pay, I think I signed up 5 or 6, 7 years ago, and I'll log in and look at a different, you know, module whenever it's convenient and
Oh,
remind myself, you know, about a particular way of doing things. And there's iPhones and even the Android phones are forever updating their photo stuff. So, um, and there's just a ton of options.
right. So these lessons, are they, how did you get the lessons? Are they on
Well,
YouTube?
in the iPhone Photo Academy, you sign up
Oh,
and
iPhone.
he has a certain portion that are just free. But then you may pay $18 for the year or something. I don't know what the amount is, but then you get access to a certain additional group of modules that you can go through. And once you pay for that certain group, you have them. It's a lifetime type of thing.
Oh, that'd be
So
nice. I'll have to
yeah,
look and see if I can find something like that for
yeah, I'm
Samsung.
sure there's got to be, you know, somebody's making money on helping people like you and I learn how to take photographs, you know.
Right, yeah.
And there's also one that I found is free. It's called Photo Pills. They call them they're photo pillars, but it's Photo Pills. I can give this to Rachel as well. This is it's a great app. It's a little complicated for me at times, but let's say you wanted to take a particular photo at a particular place and with the sun or the moon and you know, in your picture, it'll actually tell you, you know, what time of day, where to stand, what settings to use, and it's, you know, and these guys are traveling all over the globe, and you know, they have classes and all sorts of stuff. So that's a really that's a phone-based app that you can use that helps you learn about uh, taking, you know, quality photos. I think that's all I had.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Mark, for making the time and for joining us today. And I hope everybody learned a lot.
Yes, thank
All
you
right,
very
well,
much.
my pleasure.
Thank you so much. And Mark,
Thank you very much. That's great.
if
What's
you
that? Right?
if you could send me the name of the apps, I am happy to share it with everyone. I could post it, or I could send an email to everyone that was here today.
Yeah, I can do that as soon as I jump off here. I'll send you an email with the different links.
Cool. Great, sounds good. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to Mark, and hope to see you all at our next event. Our next event is on next Wednesday, which is another Chats with Locals. And Patty will be talking about Toronto in Canada. So hope to see
Oh, cool. Well, I'll try and make it.
you. Cool. All right. See you guys
All right,
soon.
thank you. You guys have a great day, night, evening, wherever
Thank
you are.
you.
Thank
All
you.
right. See you.